Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to be going through the step-by-step process involved in buying a home in the UK, and this video will be relevant for anyone who's buying a house for the first time and you just want to know the steps in sequence, or for anyone who is moving home and maybe you just forgotten a couple of the steps along the way, or things like the difference between exchange and completion, or just wanting to know when you can start looking and offering on a property. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is make sure that you actually counted the cost. And it sounds obvious, but there's things like stamp duty, there's mortgage broker fees, there's deposit, the conveyancing fees, and estate agents fees if you're actually selling. Now, I actually made the mistake when we last moved of completely not accounting for how much estate agents fees actually are, and I landed up with a bill of an additional £5,000 to pay just for the luxury of using their services of selling my home. And then moving on from that, the next thing you want to do is then talk to a mortgage broker. A mortgage broker will help you fully understand exactly how much you can afford, and sometimes it's more than just the online calculators where you just put in your salary and it tells you you can afford a multiple of 4 of your salary. And ideally what you want is to have a mortgage broker who has access to the entire market, so not just sort of going to a specific bank and they only give you options of their mortgages, unless that's really what you want to do. But ideally what I would prefer to do is go to a mortgage broker who has access to the entire market, and he or she can scan and see all the different products that are out there and what suits you best. And what's also really great about having a mortgage broker is that if you've got particular circumstances, like let's say you own a second property, as a landlord or something, they will be able to tell you which banks are happy to still lend you money on a residential property, because not every bank likes that, or they might have particular additional things that they require, and a broker should know the different banks and the different things that they like. Or if you haven't got good credit, they might be able to let you know which banks are more likely to be able to loan to people who don't have good credit, that sort of thing. So basically they should be the guy who knows everything about the different types of banks and should be able to advise you which lenders you're likely to be more successful with. He then will be able to tell you more specifically how much you can actually afford based on your lifestyle, bills, affordability, whether you have children, or the whole shebang, right? And then once you finish that with the broker, you can then make the decision to go on to step number 3, which is getting a decision in principle. Or you could choose to wait to do that later. Now, there's many different things that might influence whether you get a decision in principle or not. Now, one of the largest things I think is the state of the market. If there's really high competition and houses are kind of flying off the shelf and stuff, I would say getting a decision in principle gives you a leg up, because the mortgage broker will have run through your affordability, and then he will go to the bank that he recommends and say, right, I have this client and they want to borrow X amount of money. They haven't found a house yet, but should they find a house within that range, would you be happy to lend? And the lender would give a little form or a little certificate or something to say, yes, in principle we would be happy to lend X amount of money. And what this does is it tells estate agents, people that you're buying from, that you are financially in a good place. Because believe it or not, apparently some people go house hunting without any ability to actually afford to buy the house, or without any intention of actually buying the house. And so in a competitive market, most estate agents won't even give the time of day to people who haven't already taken that first step. And often it'll have a soft search on your credit, but it shouldn't be something that should affect your credit adversely. Now, if it isn't a competitive market and things are going really slow, you might not have to do the decision in principle. Now, why would you choose to wait? Decision in principles often expire within a month, and so if you don't have to do it and the market isn't that competitive and you can still view the properties that you want to view without it, I would suggest just waiting, because you'll run that decision in principle, and then within a month it's going to expire and you're going to have to do it again if you haven't found a place. You might still choose to do it if you just want to do it for your own peace of mind, if you think that you might have some affordability issues and you don't want to waste time looking for properties if you think that you're not going to get it. So that might just give you that peace of mind. And it's not an issue, if the decision in principle runs out in a month, you can just get it refreshed and renewed. Okay, so you've got your decision in principle, or you haven't, depending on what you've chosen to do and what the market is like when you're looking for a property. What's the next thing to do? So you could either now actually engage a conveyancer. I know some people are going to say, whoa, that's a bit too early. You haven't found a property yet. But there are some conveyancers. If you know for sure that you are going to be buying a house within the next, I don't know, 3-month period, there are some conveyancers who will just take a deposit. We did this. We gave a deposit of £50 for both the sale and the purchase of the properties that we were going to do. And we had no idea what our property was going to sell for, and we had no idea what the property we were going to buy was going to be worth in the end. But because we put that deposit, we were able to give them all of our information and basically get all of our ducks in a row for when we did finally find the property that we wanted. So you could do that at this point, at stage 3, or you could wait until a little later to find your conveyancer. And this is just the lawyer who will deal with all the legal bits and pieces. And often this can take a long time. So I think there is some benefit in getting cracking quite early if you know for sure you're going to be moving. Right, okay, so you either have or haven't got your conveyancer, have or haven't got your decision in principle. They're all slightly flexible. Next thing to do is obviously start looking for the house. This is the exciting bit. This is where it gets a little bit fun. So you are on Rightmove and all of the online places looking for houses is the typical thing. Now, again, this is where the market also affects how you look for property. In a slow market, you could probably go on Rightmove or Zoopla or another online platform and look, and the houses that are there, you'll call up the estate agents and say, listen, I'm interested in this. Can I view it? Book a time, go see it, decide whether you want it or not. But in a competitive market, sometimes you might find that you're calling up something that was listed an hour ago. And by the time you call, they tell you, oh, the property's taken. And you're like, well, hang on a minute. How's that possible? You literally just listed it. Now, this is where I suggest you actually figure out the area that you want to move to. Hopefully you have a good idea. We had 2 or 3 areas that we were interested in moving to. It wasn't one specific one. And so what we actually did is registered with the estate agents in each of those areas. This came after many times of calling up and finding out that properties had gone, and it was so frustrating. It was just to the point where we thought, you know what, why are we even bothering? And we realized that actually it's because registering with the estate agents means that they actually call you up first, sometimes even before the property is listed, and you are more likely to get on their list if you do what I said before. You're a hot buyer and you have your decision in principle, you've got your ducks in a row. If you're moving house, you've already sold. That's always a handy thing to have done as well. So once you're on their list, what you might find is that they will start emailing you out houses before they even go online, or they'll email you out a day or 2 before they go online, and you can register your interest. And then by the time it goes online, often it tends to be fully booked to the people who are already hot and ready to buy. In a slower market, you might not necessarily need to go that extra mile to get to the see the property. Okay, so now you're actually viewing your properties and you've seen one that you like. You can now start to make offers because you have a pretty good idea of how much you can afford. And depending again on the market, if it's a super competitive market, I would always say, if you know for sure that you want the house, offer what you think it's worth. But don't get into the frenzy or caught up in FOMO and offer more than you think the house is worth. That happened to us. We were looking at a time when everything was competitive, flying off the shelf, blah, blah, blah. And we were going to see houses that were really nice, and we were happy to offer the asking price, but a lot of people who were also seeing the property were offering way above asking price, and we didn't think the house was worth that. And so we just said to ourselves, you know what, we're not willing to go above that despite the competition. And in the end, quite a few of them actually fell through, because what happens is, whatever you offer still has to be confirmed by a surveyor who goes and views the property either for the bank or for yourself and tells you the real value, what they think the real value of the property is worth based on other things on the market. So you don't want to end up, going back around in circles and going back to the owner and saying, well, actually, I offered 30 grand more, but the surveyor won't let me. And then the owner might say, well, I don't want to sell it for any less than that. And then you're back to searching again from scratch. So always try and offer within the region of what's reasonable and what is reasonable value for the property. And a good way to do that is to just search other properties in the area of a similar size and a similar build up and see how much they went for in the past, maybe couple of months. Okay, so you've gone in, you've made your offer has been accepted. Hurrah! I mean, it's not as easy as that. I mean, we offered on so many properties and other people offered way more and we weren't willing to go above. And so it just meant that we were searching for a lot longer than we wanted to, but hey ho. So you've had your offer accepted. What now? Time to start the formal process. So at this point, you might want to run your decision in principle if you hadn't had it already, or go straight into a full mortgage application if you already have your decision in principle. Now, full mortgage application will be a hard search on your file, so this will affect your credit, not negatively, it just will have an imprint on your credit. And this is when you know whether you can actually afford the house, and hopefully no one pulls out. And unfortunately in the UK, people can pull out of the buying process at any point up until exchange when it's legally binding, and so anything can happen and you could potentially lose money from all these fees all along the way. So it's just part of the process, and unfortunately not much we can do about it. So let's just say your full mortgage application comes back positive. Great. You have hired your conveyancers early on, like I suggested. You now have given them pretty much most of your information, and all they're waiting for is for you to tell them, right, I have now had an offer accepted on a property for X amount of money, and this is the property address, and the conveyancer is now going to go and carry out searches. And essentially it's just crossing the T's and dotting the I's in terms of the house to make sure that, you know, the water supply, like just all the information you would want to know about a house before you move into it, to know, you know, how is water supplied, how is it drained, how does the sewage work, and you know, a lot of this information they request from the local authority bodies like, you know, Thames Water and that sort of thing. And if it's had an extension or work done to it, does it have planning permission, all of those things that you want to make sure are in place before you purchase this house. So the conveyancer is out to protect your legal interest before you buy the house. So this will take time. Now it depends on the house. Sometimes the process to purchase a house can be, you know, as quick as 2 or 3 weeks to, you know, 20 weeks. And it really depends on the type of house you're buying. If you're buying a house that's in probate, which is, you know, sadly someone's passed away and their will is being, you know, written and sorted out in the courts and stuff, that can take up to 6 months, you know. And so, but if you're buying a house where the person is good to go and everything's in order, that could go through fairly quickly. And it also depends on how quick their lawyers are, your lawyers are, you are to process all of this paperwork that has to go through, and also how quick you are to get it all signed up and sent back. Okay, so you've done the conveyancing. Woohoo! Okay. Phew, I feel like I'm running out of breath just like going through this process. But we've made it this far. We've got our conveyancing done. We've got our full mortgage application done. Now, hopefully, everyone else in the line, in the property chain, as it's called, are also in a good position, i.e. they've had their full mortgages accepted. They're okay to sell. If you're selling house, the person buying from you is okay to buy. Everything's good with everyone in the process. That means that you now all have to agree a date of completion. Completion is the date that you actually get keys for the house. Now, exchange happens before completion. Exchange is when it's actually legally binding to that agreement. Before this, anyone can pull out, even after you've paid for the surveys and the searches and everything. Oh yeah, that's one thing I missed, is surveys. When you get your full mortgage application, often the lender will send out a surveyor to go and make sure that the property is worth what, you know, you've offered for it, and that it is in a good condition as a security for them in case, you know, you stop paying and they get the property back. They want to make sure it's a decent property. Some mortgage lenders will do a desktop valuation, which is that they don't actually physically visit the property, which is what happened to us, but we still went and had a surveyor and hired a surveyor personally for us, just for our own recourse, to make sure that, you know, the house was as good quality as we were seeing, and also for, you know, our own peace of mind should we wish to sell in the future. We actually had a professional come in and do a report. Okay, so yeah, so the survey is also one thing that I forgot to mention. So now you are ready to move. Everyone's agreed a completion date. You can't exchange until everyone agrees a completion date, and completion date is the date you hand over the keys. So when you've agreed a completion date with all parties, everyone's happy to move on a Thursday or whatever, you can now exchange, assuming all the searches and everything have come back and they haven't brought back any red flags. You know, and red flags might be like, oh, there was subsidence on the property, like, you know, it's prone to flooding or it's prone to X, Y, and Z. If negative does come back, it is something worth considering. Do you really want to take the risk of buying a house that has potentially had, you know, a land shifting in the past, or could potentially be prone to, you know, flooding. You might decide, well, actually, I'm not interested in that. And that's when a chain can fall apart. If someone decides, you know what, something's come back, I've paid for it, paid for the searches to be done, but you know, this is why you do the searches, you know, you pay money for it. But if it comes back with something negative and you're not willing to take the risk, it's perfectly acceptable to drop out. Because remember, you know, you're buying a property and it's one of the biggest purchases you'll probably ever make. It's a lot of money. So yeah, everyone's agreed exchange, everyone's agreed completion, so they can exchange. And exchange basically is when all the lawyers agree the exchange date based on what their clients say, and now you exchange. The lawyer will just call you up and say you've now exchanged contracts, and this basically means that it's legally binding and that no one can pull out of the process now, you know. And at this point you want to make sure that you now have insurance on the house that you are buying from that day, because if that house burns down, you still have to buy it. You are legally bound to make that purchase. So you want to make sure that you've got building insurance set from the date of exchange, not from the date that you move in of completion, from the date of exchange when it's legally binding and you're still living wherever you're living. Okay, so that's really it. That's the end of the process. And, you know, hurrah, you've agreed completion date, and then hopefully you move into the house and it's as lovely as it was when you viewed. And I forgot to mention actually that you can actually request to view the house a couple more times after you've made the offer, just, you know, I don't know, to measure up stuff, or you just want a second look. Because let's be honest, when we view a house the first time, you know, it's a quick whiz through, and we try and be as thorough as possible, but it's not always that feasible. So that's the end of it, really. If I've missed any steps, please add it in the comments so everyone can benefit from that. And I hope you found it useful. Please click the like button if you did find it informative, because it helps me know that what information I'm providing is helpful. And subscribe if you're interested in knowing more about topics about money and learning from my money mistakes and just personal finance in general. I'm Vambai from the Money Babe App, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.